Howdy, folks. This is Anthony Dream Johnson, co-founder of the Redman Group, CEO of 21 Studios. Here with today, episode 104 of the Redman Group on sex, dominance, and submission. Today, I'll be joined by two 21 Convention alumni speakers. That'll be Alan Roger Currie from DirectApproachDating.com and Pat Stedman from PatStedman.com. Recently put out a few previews of Pat Stedman's speech. His first one he gave in 2019 at the convention. Those you'll see on 21 Studios, and the full speech will be out soon. And Alan Roger Currie, we just put out his second speech at the convention from 2018. That's been kicking ass on YouTube on 21 Studios. Came out just recently, about 2 days ago now. That was on how manipulative time wasters exploit naive men. Very subtle title. I'll bring him in a second, but before we do, today's show is sponsored by 21university.com, the world's most positive videos for men. You can start there with a free 30-day trial. You get early access to 21 convention speeches and Redman Group episodes. They have no ads, very clean, very pro. And we have iPhone apps coming out soon too, iPhone and Android. Without further ado, I'll be welcoming here Alan Roger Currie and Pat Stedman to today's show. Welcome, boys. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Good to be here, Anthony.
Yeah, good to see both of you again, man. Pat, you've been on the show a couple times before. Alan, this might be your first time, first or second?
Yeah, this is the first time. I've done your live version at the 21 convention, but I've never, other than that, no, this would be my first time.
Nice. You actually saw a clip of that last night, that one you're on with Socrates and Rich Cooper back in the day. There were some guys on Instagram that pulled it, and they were cutting clips out of it. I didn't even know them. People were tagging me and stuff, and it was kind of funny, but it was good. It was savage. So
okay, cool.
Also, too, guys, Pat Stedman doesn't have a book yet, but Alan Roger Currie has several books. This is, I think his most famous one's Mode 1. It's what he's known for. You can find that on Amazon. He also has the Beta Male Revolution and a few others, like I think,
two others, The Possibility of Sex. And then I have Say It Again, Mastering the Fine Art of Verbal Seduction and Erotic Dirty Talk.
Yeah, that sounds good. I need to get it.
Yes.
So today's episode, guys, for you watching, live and then later on, we're gonna talk about sex, dominance, and submission. So to give some background to this, I've been involved in the pickup community and the wider manosphere since I was very young, 17, and that was 2005. And since then, I've seen, it's been there, but very minimal content on sex, how to get better at sex, how it relates to game, how it relates to personality, how it relates to relationships. It's always been, I think, kind of neglected, especially in the 2000s. There was a huge obsession with, Alan remembers this because he was notorious for direct game. But back then, the big rage was like indirect game versus direct game. And I think at the end of the day, Alan's side kind of won out. And indirect game, this kind of avoidance strategy with women has waned off. But throughout this time, I really think sex needs to be focused on a lot more, and it hasn't. So today we'll be kind of addressing that. So my first question, you guys, as we open up this discussion is, how does sex relate to just picking up women? Separate from long-term relationships, separate from marriage, separate from anything like that. For young guys learning how to pick up women at bars and stuff, when they can go back to them after this lockdown stuff, how does sex relate to that? Like, what does it mean, and how is it going to affect their game with women?
Well, I think sex is, number one, sex is one of our top three most powerful needs and impulses, according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think number one, of course, is food and water. Number two is shelter and safety from danger. And number three is desire for intimacy, sexual intimacy, and friendship. So, but what makes the desire for sex so interesting is that it's a powerful desire, but at the same time, society almost socializes us to not be forthright about that desire. To kind of almost suppress it. Women are socialized to present themselves as the proverbial good girls, and men are socialized to generally present themselves as well-mannered gentlemen. And we're taught from the time we're young to suppress our desire, not really discuss it, particularly in our very early conversations. And I think that causes a lot of confusion and frustration for both a lot of men and for a lot of women. And that's one of the things that provoked my original book. Well, one, because when I was young, like my mother, she always taught me be a gentleman when you're talking to women. Say all the right things, flattering things and polite things. And
Be
she
a
would
good boy,
say,
basically.
yeah, exactly. She would basically, all of her advice was centered around be a polite, good boy. And she would tell me specifically, never talk about sex.
Oh my God.
But the thing I found as I went through high school and my first few years of college is that on the positive end, I did develop this reputation for being a gentleman. But on the negative end, I was getting friend zoned a lot. Mm-hmm. And then finally, I broke out of that as I told the story. I tell it in my book, Ooh, Say It Again. But the first time you invited me to the 21 convention, my major turning point happened in summer of '84. I was on this triple date. And without getting through all the lengthy details, that was the first time I just really boldly and bluntly told a woman, basically, hey, the reason I'm sharing your company right now is because I want to fuck you. Mm-hmm. I don't talk about the weather. I don't talk about your high school experiences. I want to fuck you. And we ended up fucking.
Yep.
And I was never the same after that.
Eye-opening. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd say that having connection to your sexual energy is so important when it comes to game, because you see a lot in pickup over the years is that guys would be learning all these techniques and kind of like aping the behavior of somebody who maybe knew how to attract women, knew how women's psychology works. And even if they started to internalize that, everything at the end of the day comes down to the sexual interaction. Everything before that is just a courtship, a sort of foreplay to the sexual interaction. And so even if you know all that stuff about how to attract a woman, having issues on the performance side and knowing that deeper in your head completely, like it affects you on a certain level, and women can really smell it.
Yeah.
If you're a guy who knows how to fuck, right? If you're a guy who knows what he's doing in bed, that women know that you're comfortable with that. And some guys exude such a ridiculously strong sexual energy that you can really cut through a lot of the foreplay and move right to it, because they sense, they know what you're about and they want it. I mean, women love sex. They absolutely love sex. But as Alan was saying, that like being comfortable with the fact that you want sex, that's like the biggest psychological hurdle I've seen for guys, is that they feel like they have to conceal this. They have to be like, no, enjoy the dance moving forward, but the purpose of the entire thing is for sex. You want to fuck, she wants to fuck.
This is like referring to a covert contract, like Dr. Robert Glover would refer to, right?
Correct. And I mean, I've said this before, and I think it's sometimes guys who are maybe in really bad marriages or really depolarized marriages can sometimes misconstrue it. But one of the things that Dr. Robert Glover said in his book was about that, like men in like relationships should just say like, I want to have sex. And it's like, that's really beta. It's like, well, I get it. Like, if maybe it's not the top level, but it's a significant jump from, I can't even express that I want sex. And they kind of, dance around it and, try to make it seem like, oh, so, what's up with you? Like, how are you, just trying to maneuver into her offering it. It's a big jump to say, hey, look, I want to have sex right now. And honestly, from what I've seen, a lot of women are like, okay, yeah. And that is like, and that's not even anywhere close to a high level, but just that one little paradigm shift it's so game changing.
So you're saying that would be like a baby step getting out of a death spiral in a bad relationship.
Correct. Yeah. Because if you say, and if she says no, and then you can go off and do your own thing, at that point, like the issue that guys have on a fundamental level is that they devalue their own sexual power versus a woman. And they feel that if a woman doesn't sleep with them, that it affects them in some way, rather than becoming really autonomous in their own energy and going off and like, don't chase a woman for sex. And I think in a lot of cases, if a woman doesn't understand this is why you like go off and be with other women, or you divorce or whatever, because you can't allow her to control your sexual outlet.
So that's a really good segue. It's a little bit sooner than I was anticipating, but I think we can kind of bounce around. How does that relate to dominance and submission? Because a lot of what you just said, Pat, and I think Alan could hop in on this too, obviously. Like if she can control these things, how can you dominate her? And if that is indeed what she wants, physically, psychologically, emotionally, and all that, how are you going to do that? So does what you're saying relate to that? Or Alan?
Well, from my experience, I would say that the starting point, I tell my clients, it starts with options. I use the analogy of an employer and an employee. If you're interviewing a candidate for a job with your company and they come to you and say, oh, I want this job so bad. I want this job so bad. I have no other options for employment, so I really need to be hired by your company. If you're an asshole boss, what's going to be your temptation? You're going to lowball them on the salary because you know they have no other options. Mm-hmm. And you know, once you do hire them and you lowball them on the salary, you're going to treat them like shit because, again, you know they have no other options. And the same way in reverse. Say you know you were a head of a company and you're interviewing a candidate and you tell the employee candidate, man, I really need some workers. I don't have any other workers. Man, I need to hire you real bad. I hope this works out. Then they're going to be the asshole employee because they know you're desperate need of employees. And the same thing works with men and women in many ways. It's like if you come to a woman with an underlying attitude like, please sleep with me. I don't have any other desirable options for female companionship. Well, you're asking that woman to treat you like shit, to be manipulative as fuck, to make you jump through a bunch of hoops because she knows you're not going anywhere because what else you going to do? Where else you going to go? And so the first basis for dominance, the way I see it is when you're that employer, even if you had the most beautiful, sexy woman apply for a job at your company, you can't allow yourself to be too quickly or overly enamored by her beauty and her sex appeal. You got to find out, are you a good fit for my company? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you got to make sure she's going to do the job just like anybody else. And if she fails to do the job like anybody else, she can be fired like anybody else.
Trump style. You're fired. You're fired.
No, Alan, I mean, I love that analogy. I use a very similar one with my clients. And her looks are her application. When she gets the interview, if she's got the looks and she's got the femininity, but she doesn't get the job if that's the only thing she has to offer. There's so much more that she has to bring to the table. And unfortunately, a lot of guys, they see a woman who's attractive, and then it's like, please, like, I'll make you the boss, right? You can take over my company. And it's just not the way you wanna think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what Alan said, that it just I was interpreting it as basically you're inviting a lot of manipulative behavior and abusive behavior. It's like, what else is she gonna do? You're doing everything she doesn't want you to do. She wants you to lead. She wants you to retain your power, and you're just pissing it away into the wind or at her or something. Mm-hmm. So she ends up, all this kind of. I saw Pat recently on Twitter was saying like he was quote tweeting somebody about some dude had, I don't know, married a hooker or something, and I'm knock on wood. Yeah, but Pat was like, man, how do dudes get themselves in these situations? And I guess it starts there. They throw away that dominance and that power that women don't even want in the first place. They might try to, shit test you out of it, but they don't want you to win, or they want you to win. They don't want to win that interaction.
It's funny you say that, Anthony. Going back to what I call my turning point story. That's what that woman in that story did to me. She shit tested me to essentially see, are you man enough to dominate me? Mm-hmm. She didn't want me, as you say, she didn't want me to give away that power. She wanted to test me. And once you could say I basically passed her test, it was so amazing. This woman, as you know the story, Anthony, it was a triple date. At the beginning of the triple date, say the first hour of it, she was like this loud talking, sassy mouth, smart, elegant bitch. And then when I did pass her shit test, and I was more one with her, like within, I'd say less than a minute, literally, her whole behavior and demeanor changed. She became like ultra submissive. It was almost like she said, "Okay, you win. I'm your bitch."
Yeah.
So she relaxed. She relaxed. Yeah.
And that really that changed me, like I would say, for the rest of my life. Because I was like, damn. So this is how it works. I mean, seriously, I was like amazed. But anyway, but yeah, that was a good point you made, Anthony, is that a lot of men, I don't think some men consciously realize that they have power that they either underutilize or worse, they give away. And my question to them, God, why are you doing that? Don't give away power that you have.
It almost seems like it's like shit tests are really just power tests. They're testing how powerful you are and how naive you are, how powerful you are, how much strength you have internally to retain your power, rather than get tricked out of it or by her or by society telling you bullshit about how to behave.
Yeah, there's an idea that I think a lot of people who are in the evolutionary biology sort of scene put forward. I know Jordan Peterson certainly does, and I think it's helpful perhaps in understanding the mind of a lot of guys, but it's this idea that, sperm is cheap, eggs are valuable, and that, I think Peterson said that a woman rejecting a man is like nature rejecting the man. And I don't think that is an incorrect analysis, but it's a partial analysis. So if you look at it, there's a really good book. I don't know if you guys have read it, but Is There Anything Good About Men? And it's by Roy Baumhauer, I believe. He's a really, really prestigious psychologist, kind of like a thought criminal at this point. But one of the things that he points out is about, the bands between men and women in terms of intelligence and ability, and how on average men and women are sort of the same, but the men have a much larger band than women. So at the very, very top of the scale, men dominate the talent and intelligent quotients, but they also dominate the bottom with criminals and people who have mental disabilities. So the point of this, where I'm getting to it, is that a lot of guys are thinking that women are above them, but a lot of the guys, especially that we're working with, right? There's sometimes guys who are in like the top, 10% of income in the country. They're in the top. They're way more fit than the vast majority of the population. Objectively, they're actually way above most women. They're like a 9 on the scale, and they don't realize it. And so this concept for these guys, like, the eggs are like, women are so important, I have to do this and this. Like, no, dude, if you want to even take that sort of biological determinist argument, your sperm is the most valuable. And the women are sort of just like, they all want you. You are the important one. And it's very powerful for a lot of guys that understand this perception shift to realize that they're lowering themselves. They're not even being objective about where they're at.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I want to get into another topic, but it just made me think too of all the guys I've seen. I was thinking about tweeting this the other day. I've seen so many guys just in Orlando, just in Central Florida, that are probably in that direction you're talking about. They're the top. They're much, much higher in the percentage of the population than they realize. They just have no idea. And you'll see these guys. They'll be tall, 6'2". They'll be masculine, built. Well, they'll appear masculine anyway, physically. Really good shape. Look like they make decent money, wearing good clothes. And then their girlfriend's like a fucking 5.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wouldn't fuck this girl. Like I wouldn't touch her. I mean, I wish her the best, lose weight, get in shape, look beautiful if you can. But like these guys I would see above me even in the the SMV in my age bracket. And it's like, why are you even talking to this woman? And then not only you see dating her, you'll see it, the interaction, but he's like her bitch. Mm-hmm. It's like these bodybuilders that are like amazing shape and who knows, steroids or whatever, but then they have this fat girlfriend who just walks all over them. And it's like, you could do so much better, but internally they just have no idea, oblivious. They have no idea.
Yeah. It's like, if you're a 9, act like it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Anthony, if you remember at that 2018 presentation, there was a brief portion at the beginning where I brought that up.
Yeah.
I forget what it was in response to, but I was making a point that a lot of guys, when they talk about a man's alphaness, sometimes they'll solely and specifically concentrate on the physical appearance, like how tall a guy is and or how muscular he is. And I basically said, with all due respect to, you know, guys who are super fit or athletically tall, whatever, that doesn't by itself define a man's alphaness. It can contribute to it, but it does not by itself, because I've known many men, as you just alluded to, who were physically what most men would categorize as alpha, but I would notice that their wife, fiance, or girlfriend would be just walking all over them and just treating them like a chump and a bitch. And I'd be like, whoa. And these were guys that if they were in hand-to-hand combat with the average guy, they would probably whoop that guy's ass. And again, for some guys, just on that metric alone, they would say, oh, that guy's alpha. But my attitude is, if you're 6'3", full of muscles, but your woman just talks to you, talks down to you, condescends to you, and just treats you like a bitch, how are you alpha in that regard?
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind for guys.
It's just a surface layer of alphaness is what it is. It's like a shell. And then I guess in America, we see a lot, I think due to feminism being around for so decades and decades and decades, you know, feeding people like these really bad ideas, it creates like this paradox where on the exterior, you have plenty of these guys that are genetic, genetic excellent specimens of a masculine man, a human being, a male, but they're just absolute bitches inside. And they've been that way for a long, it's not even like a recent thing. They've been that way their whole life. They were raised that way. They were that way as teenagers. They were that way in their 20s and the 30s and so on. It sucks.
Yeah, I think it's interesting also how some guys, they know how to compete against men. They know how to, they may understand that. They may understand that pecking order, but they don't understand women at all. They don't understand how women operate. And so to women, they act like simps, or they think that, well, if I can just overcome this guy, then she's going to want me, which is a very much like the frame of that is very passive. And there are actually, interestingly enough, the exceptions to that who are very often more like artist types who are perhaps not so good at competing with men on a masculine level, but they understand how women operate and they can sleep with women very easily. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of guys conflate those two things, and you can see this sort of white knight syndrome on a massive scale where I'm going to beat up that guy. Like there was that video that went around. It was somewhere in Eastern Europe, I think. And there is this guy who, like, you know, he was with this apparently attractive girl. He couldn't really see her face. It was one of those, you know, night vision cams, but he like kind of beat up, like hit the girl or something like that, or was giving her some crap. Right. And this other guy intervened. He was like trying to, you know, and he started to get into a fight with this guy who was, you know, this guy's girlfriend or, you know, whatever side piece. And the guy who had the girl, like the guy who intervened, the white knight, got shot.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
And the girl left with the guy.
Oh my God.
Who had hit her, right? So it's like he it's just, I mean, there's a lot of lessons to be gleaned from that, but yeah.
You know, Alan put it a really good way too, I think, a little bit different from that. Well, related to that though, in his 2018 speech, I think this is the recent one that came out. I think he was talking about in your speech, Alan, maybe you can refer to it or clarify it, but men will do well sometimes like competing with other men, but then women will basically bully them. And I hadn't seen it put that way before, and I hadn't even thought of that. That's a really good way to do it. You'll see a lot of these women who have been masculinized by feminism and culture and blue pill crap and whatever. And, you know, the first chance they get, a guy will fail a shit test, and then he invites this, and then she bullies him. And then this is extremely unattractive, and then it, you know, blows up in his face. He gets real estate in the friend zone, who knows what. But a lot of it's actually bullying behavior. And you actually use the word bully, which I hadn't heard used before in that context. So that was pretty interesting, Alan.
Yeah, because a lot of men, just on the term bully, most men associate that with another man.
Yeah.
You know, when they hear bully, they automatically think of, you know, the classroom bully from when they were in elementary or middle school, or when they went to college, or a boss that was a bully, but it has male connotations to it. But one of the points I try to make to men is that women are just as good, if not oftentimes better, at bullying men than other men are. They might not do it in the physical way. You know, the number one way the average male bully operates is he'll come to you with the attitude of, I want you to act the way I want you to act, which is basically subservient to me. And if you choose not to, your consequence will be, I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to cause you some type of physical pain. Whereas women's bullying tactic is, I want you to act the way I want you to act, which is subservient to me. And if you choose not to, I am going to withdraw the opportunity for you to fuck me. Yeah. I'm going to deny you the opportunity to fuck me. And a lot of guys give into that, like, especially if a woman is a 7, 8, 9, or 10. You know, those are the number one women who can usually get away with that. And the guy will be like, well, shit, I don't want to lose the opportunity. If they already are fucking that woman, they're like, I don't want to lose the opportunity to continue to fuck them. Or if they haven't fucked a woman yet, they're like, I don't want to lose the opportunity to fuck these women for the first time. So they're like, basically, what do you need me to do? You need me to spend money on you? You need me to buy you some clothes? What do you need me to do? And the thing about it, once women see you're willing to just give in to their demands like that, automatically in their mind, they've lost respect for you. Yep. Even if they continue to interact with you, sometimes the woman will leave you alone because they just develop that much contempt for you, your lack of backbone. But other times, if they're more manipulative, they'll continue to interact with you. But in their mind, they've already lost respect for you.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, yeah, I had a fuck buddy a few weeks ago. I've been banging her a couple times at that point, and she wanted me to, come bang her on a Saturday night. And it was late. I didn't feel like doing it. It was really hot too. Like, this girl was super hot, and I was like, I'm not doing it. Whatever. See you later. And she's then, before I got off the phone, she's threatening to call some other dude to come fuck her. And I was like, oh, cool, go fuck yourself. Click. She just sent me 10 text messages. How dare you fucking hang up on me? All this bullshit. But now that's really harsh. Like, I'm not, not every guy needs context specific. That worked. Yeah. And my personality and the dynamic of this relationship. But that's a much better option, I think, for most guys than anything like you were saying, Alan. Like, oh, I'll do this for you, and all this subservient crap. I just didn't feel like fucking her that night. I didn't feel like driving. It was late. I had a drink already. I was like, I don't feel like waiting to sober up. Fuck all this shit. And then the threat, I knew it was bullshit anyway. I mean, it could be real. Who knows? She could call some other dude up. I was like, who cares? Go fuck yourself. Bye.
Yeah, and then she really trashes herself even more in your reputation, right? Because it's like, wow, you're really just a slut. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I already knew she was a slut.
Yeah, you knew. I know.
Yeah, obviously. The first night I fucked her, I was like, who's daddy's little bimbo slut? It was just rolling off the tongue. Like, who's daddy's little beach slut? I was just making up shit. Beach bimbo. I was like, beach slut. She lived near the beach. So let's actually segue into something, I was just kind of riffing on here. But, well, let's do this first. So in the manosphere, my experience of it with the pickup community and seduction community and everything beyond that, most of the time you see with sex, anything related to sex advice and talking about it, a lot of it tends to be technique specific. It's like, do this, not this, all this bullshit. But the other day, we put out a video on 21 Studios from AJ Cortez, one of our speakers, and he proposed the idea that sex was like 90% psychological, only 10% kind of mechanical. In terms of being good at it, maybe even more fundamentally what it is, but also like getting better at it, getting good at it, having a really good time. So what do you guys think about that idea? That sex is 90% psychological, only 10% physical, kind of mechanical?
Well, I actually first learned that in human sexuality course in college. I remember, I took a human sexuality course, and that was I think the percentage was a little bit different. I want to say my professor's percentage was 80-20, but essentially the same thing. But yeah, he was talking about that during one of the classes. He said a lot of you men and women, particularly you men, probably think sexual enjoyment and satisfaction is all about the physicality of the act and as you said, the mechanics of the act. But he said, actually, that's wrong. He said sexual enjoyment and sexual satisfaction, at least 80% of it, is psychological. I think he said psychological and emotional. He said psychological and emotional. And he said only about roughly 20% has to do with Then he gave a few examples, like he said, you could say be in bed with a woman that's beautiful and sexy, but I don't know if one of her sisters just died, or basically her mental space was somewhere else. He said that's not going to be enjoyable sex.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you might know all the right positions and how to move this way and gyrate this way. He said if her mind is somewhere else, thinking about, again, the death of her sister or the death of her grandmother, whatever it may be, that's not going to be an enjoyable and satisfying episode of sex. And so that was one of the examples he gave. So, yeah, matter of fact, in none of my books, particularly my most sex-oriented book would probably be Who'll Say It Again, but I don't even talk about mechanics in my books. I talk about things to do with erotic dirty talk and using that to your advantage. Because what I found is, and I said this in my presentation, no, I think this was in 2017, 21 Convention presentation, but I said, a woman's mind always bats 1,000. Always bats 1,000. What I mean by that is that a lot of guys will say to themselves, well, if I do this, it'll turn on. And if I say this, it'll turn on. And there are some things you can both do and say to turn a woman on. But what I like to do, and this relates to my title, Ooh, Say It Again, I like to have women repeat things that are kinky or out of their character. Matter of fact, it's interesting. A quick side note, I had a woman listening to me being interviewed, and I mentioned the same thing. This let me know I was on the mark. She wrote me, she said, Alan, why would you say what you said for free? And I kind of wrote her some smiley face. She said, no, I'm serious. She said, you should never give away that for free. She said, I know as a woman what you said was right on the mark, but you should be charging for that. She said, you should never say that for free. But yeah, the thing I said essentially, and now I'm saying it again for free, is that women get extra turned on hearing something come out of their own mouth.
Yep. This is an act of submission, basically, right?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, say give an example, it's one thing for you to say to a woman, I want you to suck my dick. But it's another thing for you to say, oh, I would love, for my dick to be in your mouth. What do you think? Say it to me. Tell me. And then the woman says, oh, I want your dick in my mouth. And then in that moment, that's when I would say, oh, say it again. I want your dick in my mouth. Say it again. Matter of fact, here's another quick story. I was with this woman. This was years ago. And it's funny things you pick up just from watching the TV. I was watching this TV morning show. And this woman was interviewing this diet expert, nutrition expert. And she was asking about the ins and outs of dieting. So he made this point. He said one of the biggest mistakes people make is saying that you're not going to eat your certain favorite food. Like he said, say your favorite food is chocolate ice cream and you're on a diet. You should never say, I'm not going to eat chocolate ice cream. And the woman hosting the show was like, why is that? And then he went out on the delineation of how your conscious mind works versus your subconscious mind works. And since then, I've done my research on how both works. And I'm not going to get too lengthy and academic, but essentially he said, when you say, I'm not going to eat chocolate ice cream, your conscious mind hears that whole statement. But the way your subconscious mind works, it associates certain things with pleasure, enjoyment, satisfaction, and other things with pain, frustration, boredom. So all it hears is if you've enjoyed chocolate ice cream, your subconscious mind starts playing memories of you enjoying chocolate ice cream. So even though you're saying, I'm not going to eat chocolate ice cream, all your subconscious mind hears is chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
Chocolate ice cream. Now fast forward to an incident I had with a woman we were working on an election and we got into these political debates and the night was wrapping down. And first, one of my male buddies was going to give me a ride home. And she said, no, I'll take Alan home. And I went to my friend like, yeah. So we go to this place. I said, hey, let's park. And so then I just very boldly, I said, man, I can't wait to see your lips wrapped around my dick. And she looked like, how dare you, Alan? You, oh my God, you're just so audacious. I can't believe you said that. I said, no, I know my dick is going to end up in your mouth. She said, you know it is. I said, I know it is. Then honestly, I just boldly unzipped my pants and just pulled out my dick. And she said, Tim, you are really bold.
When in doubt, whip it out.
Yep.
So now, referencing this that what that dying guy said. So she said, well, Alan, I hate to, butt your bubble, but I'm not going to suck your dick. And I just very calmly, I said, you're not? She said, no, I'm not. I said, okay, then say it. She said, you want me to say that? That's easy for me to say. I said, then say it. She said, Alan, I'm not going to suck your dick. I said, say it again. She said, Alan, I'm not going to suck your dick. Now, fast forward to about the 7th or 8th time, she was like, Alan, I'm not.
Savage as fuck.
Next thing you know, I said, you're going to suck what? She said, I'm going to suck your dick. Then I just lowered her head. As I'm lowering her head, she looks at me and she says, I hate you. But she sucked my dick. Because I knew her some kind, unless my one exception I would have misjudged is if she had some kind of, say, I don't know, traumatic experience sucking cock and, I don't know, cause some kind of bad memory, then that's when what I did would have backfired. But other than that, I knew if she had enjoyable experiences in the past sucking dick, that her subconscious mind was going to work. And it worked like a charm, man. It worked like a charm. So
there's an old Christian saying, I'm not Christian, but I'm familiar with it. And it's that words become flesh. And I think this is what this relates to, is if you say something enough times like that, and this could be in almost any context, but especially with sex. Yeah, I have experiences similar to that, Alan, not quite as down to the T, but it's like a feedback loop they get into. And like, this would you say the 7th, 8th time, all of a sudden her head's gone down and your lap's stuck on your dick. It's like a little spiral they get into. And yeah, if there's no serious trauma there, I think that's going to be pretty consistent for guys. It's a good tactic, good technique. Yeah, and that's the whip it out technique and what you just said, Alan. Those are the techniques I think more guys need to be learning, because unfortunately a lot of and I don't know how much of this has to do with just sort of mainstream Cosmo sort of guide to sex that's been put out and sort of infiltrated its way into pickup circles. But you learn a lot of, you understand the vagina, right? You understand like where things are, you understand how to do certain techniques, and there's value to that. Of course, there's value to that. But the problem is that guys have gotten almost into this mechanical thinking. And I think it comes from, frankly, a lot of the women who put that stuff out there have sexual dysfunction. They're like addicted to vibrators and stuff like that. And so everything to them is really like a mechanical kind of sexual action to come, basically. So guys who read that stuff, they're thinking like, all right, I got to make her squirt. I got to do this technique, or I got to like touch her clit in this right way, or I got to. And what happens is that even if they get good at that stuff, their neediness starts to shine through. And so maybe in the very beginning of an interaction with the girl, they can give her a really amazing sexual experience because they just know how woman's body is. But over time, they're going to start to lose frame in the interaction, the neediness to make her come. And to make her that if I touch you here, you're going to have a response. It starts to collapse over time. And that's why I think that this pushback that's been happening recently about, shout out the Rivellino, right? Face fucking, but this idea of pulling the fundamental polarity back towards the guy and the woman pleasing the guy, because the woman pleasing the guy pleases the woman. Yeah. And then that other stuff, it's good to know, but to not lean on it as a priority. I was thinking too, Pat, that back in the 2000s, pickup community and manosphere, even today you still see it, but back then especially you'd see a lot of this instructional mechanical advice if there was any talk about sex, it would be like this. It'd be some long posts, whether the guy was either full of shit or even like a keyboard jockey, or he knew his stuff and it was legit, or some combination of the two. But it was always this mechanical kind of thing. And I wonder if a lot of that's just because guys who are drawn to the manosphere are like super analytical in the first place. So they gravitate to the stuff either in person, when they're going, the beginning of a relationship with a girl, banging her or whatever, or even just, trying to figure it out on their own. They just gravitate immediately to all this stuff. Like, how do I, like the mystery method, how do I formulate a fucking 10-step plan to like get in her vagina and then make her orgasm? And they don't think about anything more fundamental to what's going on.
That's funny you say that. As super analytical, man. I remember when I spoke in London in November 2010. A lot of the guys who attended this particular conference were really intelligent guys. A lot of them had, master's degrees, PhDs, but in many cases, their intelligence was their weakness, because they would overthink and overanalyze like everything, like literally like everything. And I would just have to tell so many guys, like, you're overthinking this. They're overanalyzing this.
Yeah.
Like, well, Alan, like, if I'm talking to a woman and she takes her left finger and twirls her hair instead of with her right, like, what does that mean? Like, and I'd be like, dude, it's not that serious. But they're always, a lot of guys are always trying to see if what might cause what effect, cause and effect. What does it mean? If I say this and then she says that, what does that mean? And sometimes it would be on point. It might be relevant, but equal, if not greater number of times, it was totally irrelevant, to the point where I would tell guys, for me, I would tell my clients, just concentrate on what you want to verbally communicate to women. What desires, interests, and intentions. Don't try to anticipate what's going to be this specific reaction, what's going to be this specific response. Because the thing guys need to realize is that, and this is one of the things that was one of my early epiphanies, is that a lot of women's reactions and responses cannot be taken on face value. Meaning that a lot of times you can say XYZ to a woman and she could seem to be giving you a positive response, but it ultimately ends up with you in her friend zone. Then on the flip side, you could be saying ABC to her. Oh, I'll give you another quick story. Perfect example. Speaking of London, I think I told the story when I spoke in London. There was one time a female friend of mine in LA gave this party, and she introduced me to this woman. Let's call her Danielle. She introduced me to Danielle. Now, Danielle, I wasn't at the party. For whatever reason, I wasn't totally mole one with her like I wanted to be. But then I ran into her about a week later in Venice Beach area in LA. And I'm like, not only mole one, but what I call mole one hardcore, meaning that I was really like just X-rated, triple X-rated language, really explicit.
In the zone.
And at the time, she has this negative reaction. She's basically like, oh my God, you're an asshole. You don't have any home training. What's wrong with you? Who taught you how to talk to women this way? I mean, she was going off on me, and I naively at the time, I bought into it. I treated it basically like it was a negative reaction. So she ended up saying, oh, I got to go. So now, fast forward a week, I'm talking to the original friend who hosted the party, who introduced me to this woman, and we're talking about different things. And she says, so Alan, I heard you ran into Danielle. And she said it like, and I'm like, why, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, I told her I wanted to fuck her and she cursed me out. I said, what else is there to tell? And she was like, no, shut up. Tell me the real story. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was mole one with her and she had a really negative reaction to it. And then she went, And then I get curious. I said, why are you going, And basically she ended up saying, she said, that ain't the version I got. I said, well, what's the version you got? And she was like, well, I don't know if I should tell you. I said, no, go ahead and tell me. And then she just ended up showing me how women can be full of shit. She said when she talked to Danielle after I ran into Venice Beach, Her version of the story was Danielle told her, "Oh, I ran into your friend Alan, and oh my God, he had my pussy dripping wet. He's just so nasty. He's incorrigibly nasty. He was talking about fucking my face and making me swallow his cum. And oh my God, he was just so nasty. I couldn't even talk him out of being nasty." And it's funny, sadly for me, I was so naive at this time. It's like, I don't know, late 90s. I was like, "Are you sure?" She was like, "Yeah, I'm telling you. That's my girl. She talks to me on the road." She said she couldn't wait to get home and pull out her vibrator and fuck herself thinking about all the nasty shit you said to her. Mm-hmm. And I was like, in my mind, like, I'll be goddamn. So it was a learning lesson for me. That was one of the things I told the guys that helped me realize that a woman could be cursing you out to your face and calling you all kinds of assholes and jerks. But in her mind, she's like, shit, this guy's fucking turning me on. He's so bold and unapologetic about his sexuality. Fuck, I want to just drop to my knees and say it. But what prevents her is that little, what I call the good girl voice on the shoulder, as I like to call it. The little white angel good girl voice that says, "No, Rachel, you're a good girl. Don't act like you're a slut. Be a good girl. So act like you're offended and insulted by what he's saying so that he'll feel bad." But yeah, man, to hear that from her friend tell me that she couldn't wait to get home and masturbate, I was like, you can't take these women's, a lot of their reactions on face value.
Well, yeah. It's dissonance, right? Like you have the Madonna whore complex, and you have some women will really associate with the sort of the Madonna, I'm the good girl. And then some, I would not say the majority, but they are very much associated with being, the slut, the whore. But every girl has both inside of her. And a girl who thinks of herself, like you said, Alan, as a good girl, she's going to get dissonance when you turn her on like that, and you say things to her that bring out that whore energy that she's not comfortable with that energy at all. But she still wants to experience it, and it's still what turns her on. And I actually think that, like, amazing relationships, it's really about reconciling that stuff. It's about bringing out that dirty from a girl who maybe thinks of herself as good and allowing her to be both. And I think that you can also do the same, and maybe a little bit more difficult for a lot of guys to get over themselves, because a girl who's got that sort of whore energy, she's certainly used it, right? But there's an account, The Honest Misogynist, and he talked about like turning a hoe into a housewife. And you can do the same thing. You can bring out the fact that, you don't just have to be, it's a little bit not relevant to our conversation here, but you can get the best of both worlds from a girl, but you have to be willing as a guy to go into both spaces. And a lot of guys they don't get, like, you see all these guys who are like not getting their sexual best. Well, they're not getting their sexual best because they're not connected to their own sexual energy. They're not bringing it out of her,
I would add another theory to this as well. I've seen in my experience, I've seen this behavior before too. And it's later you always look back on it, or you hear something like that, like Alan went through, and you're like, oh fuck, like the girl got me. But then she went home and was fucking jerking off to you, literally in that case. But I think also some girls who are actually on the horse side of terms of what they associate with, like Pat was talking about, I think they actually get greedy when they get like a really explicit sexual provocation like that, or experience, especially in a social setting, like at a beach or something like that. And they get carried away with testing you, and they don't know when to stop, and they want to see how fucking explicit you're going to get. How intense is this guy going to go? And then they go home and jerk off to you. And it's just like, it's just fucking stupid both ways. But I do think there's a minority of women who do that. They're just like, they are getting turned on. They know they're getting turned on, and they're just feeding you bullshit. They know they're feeding you bullshit. You're not quite sure if they're feeding you bullshit. And then even though you're being explicit, so I think there's an element of like sexual greed, and then it just ends up being kind of stupid for both parties. But most of the time, I think it would be more like, it's a dissonance thing that Pat was talking about, or just not comfortable with it or whatever.
Well, going back to what you said, Pat, a lot of what you said is actually what my book, Ooh Say It Again, explores in a few chapters. Like I have a whole chapter about the effects of the Madonna whore complex. And what I basically create is this ranking system. I rate women in terms of their sexual sensibilities from 1 to 5. And for example, a 5 in Usaid again would be a woman who has such deep-seated social programming and cultural conditioning that she's trained her mind to only really listen to her good girl side.
Mm-hmm.
And then a 1 would be a woman who's just the opposite. She's totally free-spirited and sexually liberated, has no problem being open about her slut side. And then the 2s, 3s, and 4s are those shades of gray in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you were correct in everything you said. And the problem with a lot of men, one of the biggest problems I see with a lot of men in regards to this, you got some men who are so judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, not in tune with their own sexuality, the combination of two, that they don't embrace both sides of the woman. Because like you said, the 100% truth is that the vast majority of women, they have both sides. They have a good girl side to them and a kinky freak side or an inner slut side to them. And as a man, you got to be willing to embrace both sides, and you got to be willing to give women permission to open up to both sides. But a lot of men, foolishly, they shoot themselves in the foot because of their own judgmental attitudes. They don't allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you want a woman to really share her full fantasies with you, if you want her to really surrender to you fully and really feel like she can trust you fully, you have to be approaching her in a non-judgmental way. And when she shares that stuff, if she shares something about, she has a fantasy of sleeping with 2 guys, right? Or she has a fantasy of having like threesomes with girls. You can't judge that. You can't judge that stuff from her if you want her to really open up and allow that entire stuff out, because she may feel a little uncomfortable with it herself, or she may sense that you're not secure enough in yourself to be able to handle that. And I think a lot of guys, unfortunately, they want their cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. They want a woman to completely surrender to them, but they're actually not willing to receive the woman's full surrender.
Exactly. Because, there you go.
Exactly. To be responsible for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was seeing AJ Cortez in his speech that came out yesterday. The 21 Convention in Poland was talking about that. Let's actually talk about that here. So AJ Cortez was talking about that responsibility associated with dominance and submission and things like that. But also the question he got asked by an audience, a member of the convention, was the difference between dominance and domineering, which is something I've heard a little bit in the manosphere, but in wider culture, there's usually no distinction, unfortunately. I think there is. So do you guys have thoughts on that? Dominance versus domineering in a short-term relationship or a long-term one, however you want to approach it.
Well, I would say that domineering comes from a position of ego, and it's more of a projection. It's more of like a bravado, right? So it's I want everybody to know that I'm like, it's like trying to over control things, and I want everybody to know that I'm the boss rather than implicitly being it. Being dominant is like a state of energy, and if you talk to someone, if you talk to a woman, right, she's going to feel that from you. Whereas if you're domineering, you're trying to push farther in to overcompensate in some way. And it is true. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of red herrings or whatever being done with feminists about masculinity, right? They tend to take the distortion and elevate the distortion. Like this is what masculinity is. Like being a dominant man is being this person who doesn't care and runs roughshod over everybody else. It's like, no, that's a distortion. That's not actually what it is. But being dominant and being masculine are healthy. You're aligned. You're aligned with yourself. You're aligned with truth, frankly, is my perspective. And women, naturally, they feel a trust around that. They feel a trust because they feel that you don't need to show it. You don't need to overcompensate with it. It's there.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. I know in my BDSM experiences, number one thing men need to realize is that there's a fine line between being dominant and abusive. And so there's some men who I listen to certain podcasts, certain live streams they think certain women should be feminine and submissive to them just by virtue of them being a member of the male gender, and realistically, life just doesn't work that way. And one thing, like we talked about earlier, about men coming across as needy, you can't really be needy and dominant at the same time. That's almost oxymoronic.
Mm-hmm.
And the underlying of any BDSM dom is that you can be replaced at any moment. Just like going back to my employer-employee analogy, you can be replaced. And see, like that's one of the reasons why I didn't like the that first movie version. They had 3 parts, so this would be part 1 of 50 Shades of Grey. Is they had the character of Christian Grey. He was supposed to be this BDSM dominant, but he was so like emotionally sensitive and needy,
wounded.
And I was like, that don't jive right. That not in the real BDSM world. That just didn't play to me. It didn't resonate with me because there's a certain calmness with your dominance when you're a BDSM dom. And so when I think of the domineering, I think of somebody that's overbearing, abusive, or borderline abusive, and basically everything that Pat described.
Like frantic and stuff.
Yeah, and that's not really sexually appealing to any woman. But a lot of women, I'm not going to say all women, of course, but a good number of them. Well, I'll say this. There's some women who want to be dominated by men, and they have no problem letting you know that in your early conversations with them. Then there's some women who want to be dominated by a man. But again, as we already talked about some of the shit testing, they're not just going to come right out and say it. They're going to basically shit test you in one way or another and see if you're worthy of leading them and dominating them based on how well you pass the test. Matter of fact, there's in the Black community, there's this legendary pimp named Iceberg Slim. Real name is Robert Beck, I think is his former.
I've heard of the name.
Yeah, Iceberg Slim. He wrote this book called Pimp. He used to be, again, a legendary pimp in the 70s and 80s. And he wrote this book called Pimp, The Story of My Life. And one of the excerpts he has in there, he was talking about a woman being a bitch, which was interesting. He said, I'm paraphrasing a lot of his words, but essentially he said, a lot of people think because I'm a pimp that all my whores would automatically, get in line and follow all my demands, commands, and requests. He said, no, that's not the truth. He said, a lot of my whores would basically shit test me to see if I was worthy of dominating them. And he said, this is what I've come to find about a woman. He said, there's only 2 times a woman's going to act like just a straight up bitch towards you. Is A, when she's convinced that you don't have what it takes to lead and dominate her, and they don't respect you. They think your backbone is non-existent, so they're going to act like a bitch towards you. Or the second time he said a woman's going to act like a bitch towards you is when a woman thinks you have the potential, you have what it takes to lead and dominate her, but you're not showing it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't refined it yet, and she feels like she needs to give you a nudge or, light a fire underneath your butt to provoke you to reach your full potential as a leader and a dominant. And I found,
even to verify it, like trust and verify.
Yeah. So, man, it's like, most people, my followers know I'm engaged now, which surprised a lot of my followers, but I'm engaged and I got a son on the way. And honestly, my relationship has a lot of elements of BDSM. My fiance is very ultra feminine, ultra submissive. And, our relationship, like we haven't had one argument yet. Like I hear guys talking about they argue with their girlfriend and they argue with their wife. I lay things out at the beginning. We even have a BDSM contract, and I don't have any problem.
Smooth sailing.
Yeah. And because she's just, her natural desires to be feminine. She's very submissive to me. Now she's allowed to. She respectfully is offered disagreements. Like if I say, I don't know, we should eat chicken wings, she will respectfully say, well, what about lasagna, sir, or something like that. But other than that, we don't have any heated exchanges, none of that. And I remember this article came out in 2013 where they had done this survey, and they actually ranked marriages and relationships that had elements of BDSM principles cause a higher degree of peace of mind and more romantic and erotic passion. And there was one more thing, peace of mind, higher. And I think it was just the third thing. I think it was just less arguments, as already mentioned, compared to traditional marriages and traditional relationships that had no, BDSM elements involved in it. And I've seen that in my own relationship.
Yeah, I know one of our speakers, Texas Dom. I think you met him in 2018.
Oh yeah, I love Texas Dom. Man.
Yeah. I tried him on today, but he has a bunch of family over right now in Texas. But he turned his whole marriage around with BDSM, basically. In his speech, he talks about that. He lays out, from the divorce that was incoming, they had been married for a long time, but it was falling apart. She found 50 Shades of Grey or something. He ended up reading it, and kind of through that, and then, internet searches and stuff, he was able to really turn his whole marriage around. It's changed his whole life, and for the positive. And it's very much like you're talking about, Alan. It's a lot of it's very explicit. I don't know if they have the contract, but he saw his grandpa's flogging grandma or whatever, which is, his wife's actually really hot. Like that's totally bullshit. But
well, so much of the problems that people have in relationship is due to a lack of clarity and understanding. I'm going to say communication, but I don't want that to be misconstrued. When you have what you're saying about BDSM relationships and how it's smooth sailing, because it clarifies the dynamics of the relationship. Both parties really understand fully how they're supposed to show up and what the other one needs from it. And one of the things that Tex was talking about in his speech and at the 21 convention was that it's a lot of responsibility for the guy. And if the guy is not, like, you can't just be dominant and then act like a child and not take care of shit. Like, you have to like play that role. And so I think it's a way to kind of cut through tons of the bullshit between couples, and when they get to that exact point. In my experience, when you have that clarity, the relationship, and you both are fulfilling your roles, the relationship is amazing. It's smooth sailing. Beneath that, I think fighting can be good, because fighting is at least some degree of communication. At least you're trying to engage with each other's. The worst relationships I've seen are the ones where neither party ever expresses anything that they want, and they don't fight about it, and they just have this like low level avoidance and resentment. And I've talked to some guys. They rarely jump into work. They rarely jump into work because they are so difficult for them to express anything that they actually even want to begin with. But they're living in like a silent hell, and they're so afraid to say anything. And both parties, frankly, are afraid to say anything that's going to upset the boat. They don't fight, and they're in this, happy little dynamic, quote unquote. But everybody hates everyone hates everything. And what tends to happen is at one point, one of the parties, something happens, the guy just maybe burns it all down and he leaves.
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
It's like a zombie marriage.
Yeah, it's a zombie marriage. Exactly.
That's why I think, they talk about the divorce rate being 50%, and some of that's because they count for second marriages and third marriages that skew that statistic. But really, I think the failure rate of marriage is a lot different from the divorce rate. I think it's a lot higher, because when people use divorce as a metric for the failure of a marriage, they're not accounting for the marriages that fail slowly, that are dying, that are really already dead. They're like a zombie marriage. So I think the failure rate for marriage is probably really high. It's probably like 70, 80%. But I do think there's a chunk that work really well. And I think Alan is on the track to doing that. I think you're in that too, Pat. We're still going to know each other, but I really like the things you tweet and you write about and you speak about. Your newsletter is one of the only ones I read, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alan, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'll be back on camera in a second. But it's funny what you said, Pat. I remember years ago when I lived in Los Angeles, I responded to this ad for the Discovery Channel, and they wanted to talk about sex. They had about 1/3 single people there, and 2/3 of people were coupled, either married or unmarried couples. And anyway, they were interviewing this one older couple. They were like in their, I don't know, mid to late 50s. But shit, I'm in that age group now, so I'm one of those older people. But anyway, here's what I found amazing. They were interviewing this couple, and the guy was married, and he said it took him like 20 years to ask his wife for a blowjob.
Oh my God.
And I was just like sitting there, mouth open, eyebrows raised. And the woman, there was some, I can't remember what her, she had one desire. And it is interesting because it's related to what Pat was saying, how you could have a couple and they both have wants and needs, but they're scared to communicate them. Yeah, this guy said he thought his wife would think bad of him if he knew he wanted his cock sucked. And a woman said she thought he would look down on her if she told him she wanted, ABC, XYZ. And I was just like, damn, how can you be in a 30-year marriage and be scared to say shit to your partner? But that showed that they weren't alone. That they went on to say that a lot of couples go through that. They'll be in, 10-year, 15, 20 plus year marriage, but be scared to communicate their wants and needs in a forthright manner.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, like you said you're getting engaged. You're engaged, right? You're getting married, Alan. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be tons of guys who are going to say stuff like, oh, you're going to get divorce raped, right? Look, the stats are, it's true about the stats, but you have to look at the individuals who are going into the situation. You can't just take you, right, Alan, and compare yourself to some random guy who has no idea about any of this stuff, who has done no work on himself, who has no awareness, and say that your rates are going to be the same. It's just flipping a coin. It's not how it works. It's not how it works. It's not going to happen.
It's very disingenuous observation of stats is what it is. They're completely lacking context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny, man. I get that too. In certain circles on YouTube, some guys, some of my own followers, even when they found out I was engaged, they was like, man, Alan, we respected you, but man, you're going to get financially raped, man. And, your woman's going to do this and you're going to experience this. And I basically just had to tell him, like, dude, I'm 57 years old, man. What do you think I am not aware of?
Damn. You're so blue pill, man. Oh my God.
Exactly. They were like, man, I can't believe you're going back to the blue pill, man.
Meanwhile, your fiance calls you sir and probably master and stuff. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I agree. Your chances of getting financially divorce raped are slim. It's not zero. I mean, anything's physically possible, but it's not. I don't think it's gonna happen either. It's stupid, and it's stupid that people. It's not stupid necessarily. It's tragic that guys think that stuff, especially your long-term followers. There's got to be a small minority, like you said. But that's just bullshit they picked up from other people. I think they probably didn't pay attention enough to what you say, and they just tune in to what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear.
There you go. Bingo.
And there's a victim mindset with all of that too, because they would just prefer to say that I have no control over anything here. I can't learn how to make my outcomes different. Mm-hmm. And it's the same mindset that got them into the problem. So it's probably right that those guys shouldn't get married, because they still have the same mindset that they are a victim to women that they probably had in their relationship. And so as long as it's like, yeah, your reality is true with your mindset, if you change your mindset, then it's no longer true. They don't get that. It's like too high level to understand. Well, like, oh no, this is what's real. My world, it's real.
Even with me, they don't want to point to. I have a pretty famous speech I put out about my experience with marriage and stuff, and the bad divorce I went through and all that. Whatever. It has like almost 500,000 views, and yet these guys don't want to. They'll watch it and they'll share it and they'll thumb it up, but they don't want to mention that as I detail in the speech, I didn't get divorce raped. I lost $0. Technically, I profited like tens of thousands of dollars off of the divorce because I spoke about it, which generated ad revenue, and people bought tickets to the convention because they found the speech powerful and it made them interested in the event and stuff like that. So not even in a case of a marriage falling apart, you're not necessarily going to get divorce raped if you protected yourself, if you were aware of how the world works to some degree, how the court system works, things like that. I protected myself in my case. So yeah, these guys, a lot of it's very overblown. There's a lot of things you can do to protect yourself, and it's not this. And I was saying too, like I was talking about the divorce rates just a minute ago, like we're talking about. But there's some marriages that work really well. I think they're a minority of the population by far, but there's still some that work really, really well, and people are really happy to be in them. I think Alan and both, you, Pat, you guys are good examples of that. I mean, Alan's gonna be a father now. There's gonna be a heir to the Mode One empire. I saw some comments the guys were saying, "Yeah, fuck yeah, that's awesome, man."
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Let's keep kind of going through this. So let's talk about progression. I know that I learned how to pick up women, approach women, get phone numbers. So there's a progression to my experience, for example, in the pickup community. Starting out, you couldn't even approach, learned how to approach, learn how to get phone numbers back when phone numbers were a thing. Now it's all Instagram or whatever the fuck, probably TikTok now. Mm-hmm. But eventually I learned how to bring women home in the same night, go on dates, bring women home too that way. But sex took a long time to figure out for me. I learned how to, get a girl in bed and bang her long before I actually learned how to bang her, how to experience not only how to bang her, but how to have a really good time myself. How the whole, everything that we're talking about here. So what do you guys think about experience with sex, both with multiple partners, guys going out picking up girls, as well as in long-term relationships? How does that progression, how is it important? And, what does it mean? How's it going to play out for guys? I only have my own experience to really go off of. I haven't seen too much about this in the wider manosphere, guys talking about it. Maybe because most guys suck.
Well,
let's just add some more meat to it. I've learned from both. I've learned in a long-term relationship a lot, and I've also learned a lot from, banging girls, fuck buddies, same night lays. Some of the best sex in my life was, like a rare same night lay where it works out really good. But also you have long-term relationships where you bang a girl hundreds or even thousands of times.
Well, I would say one of the first things I learned is probably what we talked about earlier, which was that sexual enjoyment and satisfaction is more mental than it is physical. Is that once I learned, like one of my biggest influences, Anthony, I think you already know this as well as most of my followers. One of the things that inspired my whole Mode 1 philosophy was the summer after I graduated from high school, I watched this 1980 porn movie called Talk Dirty to Me with this legendary Italian porn actor named John Leslie. And he was this prolific womanizer that would just say all this sexually explicit shit to women like in the first few minutes of conversation. And I was like, holy shit. It's funny, I never forget because my brother was with me because we had this friend. He was interested because most guys, let's put it real, most guys watch porn movies usually get aroused so they can masturbate. But me and my brother had this friend, he liked to point out like goofy stuff in the porn movie, like to make fun of, laugh at. So that's why he was showing us he showed us like 3 different porno movies and he would point out scenes that he thought was funny. But this one of them was called Talk Dirty to Me. Anyway, my brother saw me taking mental notes and he was like, I remember infamously, he said, bro, don't take notes on this movie. This is a porn film. You could never get away with that in real life, ever. You get slapped, you get cursed out, you get drink thrown in your face. Don't ever talk to a woman about sex in the first 5 to 10 minutes of your very first conversation. And I listened to him for about the next 3 years, my first 3 years of college, but then that turning point again, the triple date story, and who said again. But anyway, once I saw first that I could get women dripping wet just by talking to them without even like kissing them yet or touching on them yet, that was a major light bulb on the head for me. And so a lot of women I would deal with, I would try to see how far I could go until they would absolutely stop me. I would go beyond each of their sexual sensibilities. For example, if I got the feeling that a woman had never engaged in a menage a trois, I would just start talking about it. I'd be like, you know what? I want to fuck you and your roommate. I want to see you licking each other's pussies. And of course, they'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're talking to me this way. But I could see in their face that they were getting turned on. And like one thing I would look for is if their tongue became more active. That's why if people look on the cover of Who Said Again, it's a woman with her tongue out and to the left.
Yeah.
And because women, they do. When you talk dirty to them, one of the things they do, they say, oh, I don't know if I would ever do that. And right after they said that, they go.
It's like eye contact. Where the eyes go, there's some significance to this body language wise.
Yeah. So all that to say, I didn't so much initially concentrate just on like a lot of guys do on like, okay, I need to know how to master the doggy style position and I need to know how to master. I mean, I'm not saying that's not important. I always tell guys when it comes to mechanics, one simple way of thinking about it is a mutual massage. She's giving you your dick a massage with her pussy, and you're giving her pussy a massage with your dick.
Yep.
And I tell guys, make sure you have the best mutual genitalia massage ever, until you both have a smile on your face, you're both happy. But I always like to bring out sides of women that they may not, either they didn't know were there or they knew were there, but their social program always said, no, keep that under wraps, keep that under wraps. And that was my thing. Like my brother once said, one time, some women I knew were lightheartedly teasing me for being a sex addict. They said, "Hell, you're a sex addict. You're a sex addict." I knew I wasn't, but I threw it at my brother. I said, "Bro, you think I'm a sex addict?" He said, "No." He said, "Your desire is no more than any other healthy American male." He said, "But here's what I do think you have an addiction to." He said, "You like meeting women who are kind of carry themselves as the innocent, wholesome, good girl, and you love to see if you can bring out their more kinky side, their more slutty side. You do have an addiction to that, and
it's a challenge."
Yeah.
I know the feeling. One of the things I wanted to mention too, that's before we get Pat in on this, on experience and progression, and getting better. One of the things I found, I should have mentioned at the start of this segment, I found for getting better for me over the years, since 17, finding the pickup community, becoming sexually active and all that, is becoming more impulsive and more expressive. And that took a long time in sex for me. Separate from the mechanics, which I kind of learned just through experience, intuitively over time. But being impulsive and expressive were a lot more difficult. And probably a lot of that's personal, trauma, whatever, blue pill crap. But I really think a lot of guys that benefit from that. Maybe not everybody. Maybe some guys are more naturally prone to that, but I wasn't. And the more I've tapped into that, that natural alpha dominant side and just living that impulsively, shout out to James Marshall and those guys, the Natural Lifestyles crew. They talk about in the Australian accent, get out of your head, get into your body, mate. Get into your body. That's
a pretty good impersonation.
You got to get out of your head, mate. But it really is true. Like, and if you can do that as a man, get out of this head and get into your smaller head, I suppose, you become more impulsive, more aggressive, usually more dominant, and it's very natural, and they feel that and they love it. You'll see it in their eyes if you have eye contact in a moment with them. One of the first times I really started tapping into that, I saw a girl's eyes just light up, go wide, like a deer in the headlights, because she could see me tapping into that, and she was like, "Fuck yeah!" And then she got fucking railed.
Yep.
And that was one of the first times in my life where that really happened at that intensity and that depth and rant.
No, that's really good, Anthony. And actually, I think that it's so interesting, the progression about how this happens for guys, but to really get fully natural and authentic in the moment, part of it can be even not feeling the need to make that exact sexual exchange particularly kinky and dirty. It's kind of what is the energy that you're feeling, and what do you want? What is going on between you and that girl at the moment? Because sometimes it can be much more passionate.
Yeah.
It can be much more, connected. And
well, dude, that's not alpha, bro. You're just purple pill king. Shut up, bro.
Right. and it's so interesting because trying to force in a certain sexual exchange, and it can of course be the same woman, it just be a different day, a different energy. Mm-hmm. You trying to make it like really, really dirty and really, really kinky, it's kind of actually you are off alignment in that moment.
Yep.
And that makes the sex worse.
Yep.
So
been there myself. Yeah, plenty of times, dude. Too many times.
yeah.
Maybe not too many, but yeah.
It seems like the progression, like my progression. I mean, I've had tons and tons of terrible sexual experiences. At times when I had some performance issues, I just really didn't feel connected at all to the girl. Really in my head, talking about a lot of the mechanical stuff that I talked about earlier, like really fixating on that. I mean, I can speak to it because I've been there, and I think it's useful actually as a coach, right, to be able to have gone through the life cycle to understand where a guy's at. But I think at the higher levels, you start to get to a point where it's more about, you realize it's not about addition so much as it is about elimination, and that there were things that you learned, maybe you were conditioned to have, that earlier on affected your attitude and your mindset towards women and towards sex. And it's really about getting rid of that and becoming, what you guys just said about being in the moment and feeling like you can fully express yourself and what you want and say what you want. And sure, there's an aspect of this that I guess is unconscious competence. Like, you learn how to you learn how to dirty talk, you learn some NLP, you learn, about the female anatomy, and that stuff eventually becomes integrated. But I think it's you just have to be willing to, I mean, you have to be vulnerable to a certain extent. I don't mean like share your feelings and everything, but you have to, like, having sex with a girl and you don't have any experience, there's a level of vulnerability to that.
To learn.
Yeah, you have to learn. And, if you try to hold back and try to make everything perfect, you're more likely to get stuck.
I think with being impulsive and expressive, I think for me anyway, the experience has been like being vulnerable to my animal side.
Yes.
That animalistic, like almost like pre-human side. Like what would have Anthony 100,000 years ago been like fucking a chick? Without even language, or maybe not even access to fire or something like that, right? Like really pre-human stuff. And it's like that. I think that's a lot of what dominant submission comes down to, is like it's tapping into that part of your brain, lizard brain or whatever they call it. And women love that. They really want that. They want to bring that out in you. Like Alan was saying, they want you to be better actually. And the shit test, as abrasive as it might seem, I think it's a cue or a push for that. They're trying to push you in a better, healthier direction. That also, of course, they're going to enjoy a lot more. They're going to love it and they want it.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my first videos after I came on YouTube regularly in April of 2017. And one of my first 5 videos was about telling men to get in tune with what I called your inner animal. And I said, that's the problem with a lot of you guys. You're not in tune with your inner animal.
Yep.
And I said, sexually, you have to be. You got to get in tune. And also, Pat said something that I also emphasize to my clients when I first start working with them. I say, my coaching is not so much about adding on, say, 10 new beliefs, 10 new attitudes, but in many cases, it's just the opposite. And I think, Pat, that's what you were saying. You said it's not about addition a lot of times, but a lot of times it's about elimination. A lot of things I tell guys to do is identify certain invalid beliefs and weed them out, certain negative attitudes, weed them out, certain egotistical insecurities, weed them out. That's what's hurting a lot of guys, is that they've accumulated, in simple terms, just so much bullshit from the time they were preteen or teenage, that all this bullshit in their mind is really preventing them from being the great lover that they have the potential to be. It's like that bullshit is suppressing their potential to be some woman's great lover.
Do you guys both think, what are your thoughts on this? Does every guy have the potential to be really awesome in bed? Like a really great lover with women?
I'll say yes or no. I think all guys have the potential to be a great lover for some woman. For some woman. But now that's to be distinguished from, do all guys have the potential, say, to be prolific womanizers? No, I've said on my channel many times, and I've got a lot of pushback for saying that, but I'm like, some of you guys are never going to be like this prolific womanizer who sleeps with 1,000, 2,000 women in your life. That's not going to happen.
That's a cold splash of truth, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say that every guy can certainly be a good lover. Are they going to be, there are some guys that are so naturally in tune with the energy. It's kind of like it's like you talk about talent in general. Like anybody can learn how to be like a good artist if they put the time in and if they learn, and I don't want to contradict. It's like it's a different process. You're learning skills more when you're learning how to paint versus eliminating things when it comes to sex. But I do think that some people have just such a natural connection to it that they're like, like a Casanova, sort of like an elite level of this. But every guy, like you said, Alan, can be an excellent lover and can certainly be an excellent lover with someone who they really feel connected with, right? They can build it up within a relationship. But being able to go to like random girls and being able to bring that out of almost every girl, that could be harder for a lot of guys. And even let's just say if it is possible, it's probably not a good ROI.
Yeah.
Guys, because it's not their natural inclination.
There's more to do in life. Yeah. I think kind of what you're saying too, how I'm interpreting it is like everyone can become a great artist if they really want to get good at it. But can everyone become a Picasso or something? It's like probably not. But no, you don't need to either. There's a lot more to do in life as a man. Let's start kind of winding down the show with a few final questions here, final zingers. What are the panel's thoughts on, excuse me if I butcher the pronunciation, cunnilingus, eating vagina, eating pussy? There's been some debate on Twitter recently from guys like Rivellino, I think, and some other people. Is this beta? Is this alpha? What does it mean to you guys?
Well, I've been asked that question from quite a few of my clients and Patreon subscribers. They'll say, Alan, do you think eating pussy means you're automatically a beta male? And I'm like, hey, if you want to eat pussy, eat pussy. As simple as that. If you have a genuine desire to eat pussy, eat pussy. But don't let a woman browbeat you into your pussy. And particularly a woman that you're not in like a relationship with and you don't know anything about, her health or hygiene, whatever. No, don't let
you don't know. Yeah, you don't know who's been in there.
Yeah, exactly. So
might be getting a little something extra.
So I'd say don't if it's more so you trying to do it to all your emphasis pretty much on pleasing a woman or doing it because the woman wants you to do it or she suggests you to do it or she's trying to force you to do it. Fuck that. Don't let no woman do that. But again, if you're in a relationship with a woman, you know something about her health or hygiene and whatnot, and you genuinely want to do it, I don't see any problem with it.
Yeah, if it's impulsive, yeah. I like doing sometimes to make a girl, just making her squeal. Just, it's so oversensitive and whatever, and just watching her just fucking squirm and shit.
Yeah.
It's fun.
No, I mean, I love it, to be honest. I love it. I don't.
Look at this guy.
I enjoy it. I'm never like, oh, can you go down on me? I've never heard that. I don't think I've ever heard that in my life.
Yeah.
Maybe on some like one night stand. I can't recall. But no, I mean, I enjoy doing it. I mean, I enjoy sex more, but it depends on my mood. Maybe sometimes I'll go and I'll take my wife and I'll, take off her clothes and I'll eat her out and then I'll be done. And she'll be like, what? Like, you don't want to do anything else? Like, no, I'm good. So it just depends how I feel about it. I think that what
we call that the dine and dash.
Yeah, exactly. It's for my own gratification. But I think that what Riv's doing is, like I said earlier in the show, I think it's important for guys to. I think a lot of beginners think like I need to learn how to go down there. I need to learn how to be really good at eating out a girl if I want to be good at sex. And
it's like totally irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. It's a nice skill in your toolbox. And I can say that I will say this, that if you're a guy who has had Yeah, well, exactly. What Coley's saying here is kind of taking the words out of my mouth. For guys who maybe don't have as much sexual confidence, there is some power. There is some power in being able to really make a girl come with your tongue. And I have known some guys who maybe had some, issues with sex, and that being really good at going down on girls really kept them in the game. But I don't think it is. I'm very cautious of recommending that as an approach to guys, because it gets the orientation off. I think it's a weapon, but it's not the primary modus operandi that you want to be thinking about when it comes to sex.
Yeah, I think some of them can even use, going down on her as a shit test. Like Alan, I think that's what Alan was referring to, that kind of browbeating. I mean, that would definitely that's a power trip in that case. I think almost every time, if not every time, power play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a trap, like the Star Wars meme. It's a trap. So, final question for you guys: what are some of the pitfalls guys should watch out for as they go out into the world? They learn about women. They start having success with women. They start getting, if not automatically through experience, a little bit better with sex and stuff. And obviously, maybe over time, this gets better through effort or focus or whatever. What are some pitfalls, though? Like we talked about here, the browbeating and going down on a girl and stuff. What are some other pitfalls, though? Other than, for example, maybe getting roped into keyboard jockey bullshit in the manosphere about, sex. Like, here's my fucking 20-step, essay I wrote in the stuff from my mom's basement about how to bang a girl. Like you see this stuff consistently, though. I've seen it for years, and you still see it. It's amazing to see it in 2007, and then see it in 2014, and then see it in 2020. It's like this is never going to end. The pitfalls for the guys that want to get better and they're learning.
Well, I would say that one of the things that I've seen happen to guys is that they can get good at game. They can get good at hooking up with girls. And then they can be really good at creating like a fantasy for a girl. But they haven't done enough of they haven't really gotten the essence of what it is to be a man. They got really good at the tactics and techniques. And so they're getting good outcomes when they create this fantasy. But if they then get serious with a girl, what starts to happen is that over a period of months, usually 3, 6 months, certainly a year, 2 years, gradually their frame starts to diminish in the dynamic, because they were still addicted to the girl's validation, but they were just good at getting it at that point. And they hadn't fundamentally broken themselves and created the belief that, I hate using this term because it's so abused, but that they're the prize, right? That they are the valuable person in the dynamic. And what you see happens is that these guys will maybe get into a relationship, and then as the relationship starts to become depolarized and there's tons of fights and stuff like that, then they start to think like, oh, well, maybe it's a problem with this girl. I need to go back out and hook up with girls again. Whereas I actually think that's sometimes an avoidance of their edge, because the reason that the girl is giving them that shit, and maybe she wasn't the right choice, but the girl is giving them that shit because she sees that he actually is full of shit. And those tests are actually an opportunity for him to get to the next level. So ideally, you do that stuff on your own, right? But the pitfall is really thinking because you got some results when you're single, is that you really, really have gotten it on a deep level. And you have to be really honest with yourself about where you're at vis-a-vis this girl. Do you really feel like you don't need her? Or are you like, oh, I want her over. I got the girl I'm looking for now.
Yeah. One of the things, and I've been talking about this a lot on my channel as far as problems and pitfalls guys run into. Well, one is related to my presentation. It's simply buying into the belief. A lot of guys buy into the belief that women are not as sexual as we are. And that's bullshit. That's just bullshit. There's social programming and cultural conditioning will try to persuade them to believe that they shouldn't reveal their sexuality in the same. And in many respects, society doesn't give women the same green light, so to speak, as men. But women are sexual creatures. Women love to fuck. Women, I mean, as I pointed out in the presentation at the 21 convention in 2018, man, the female sex toy industry is like $1 billion industry.
Mm-hmm.
You telling me that's happening because women aren't horny? And secondly, and this is a video I did on my channel where I got a lot of, see, there's been this major division, at least in some circles of the manosphere, about in relation to what I do and what I teach, direct versus indirect. And a lot of guys believe you should lie to women and basically what's known as pump and dump is what a lot of guys call it. Pump and dump, where you give a woman the misleading impression you want a long-term, emotionally profound, long-lasting romantic relationship, when in actuality you just really want casual sex. And, you know, some guys endorse the idea of deceiving women in this way. I'm totally against that. A lot of guys, I feel like a lot of it comes from, a lot of guys think or assume mistakenly that a lot of these women they're dealing with out here are stupid and clueless, and they're not. Particularly in this day and age, in this Me Too movement era, they're not. Women, most savvy women know when a guy is trying to run game on them. And I know women who know how to, in a very calculated way, run masterful game on the guys who think they're trying to run game on them, which is something I talk about in my book, The Possibility of Sex. So without getting too lengthy, I think, yeah, man, quit thinking that women out here are stupid and that they're oblivious to game. Most of the women who are 25 years of age or older, they know all the little PUA tricks and gimmicks and whatnot. And what's going to happen to a lot of you guys who think you're running game on women, you're going to get game ran on you in a way that's going to be detrimental to you.
Yeah, women are clever, I'd say. Yeah, I've seen, these guys think women are stupid or whatever, and it's like, no, a lot of them are very clever for one reason or another. You know, they've been through the ropes, they've been through a lot of stuff, they've seen a lot of stuff. Maybe they are just very intelligent. Some of them obviously are, statistically. Yeah. So you can get, and getting the game flipped back on you, I've been there.
Girl game.
Yeah. Girl game, yeah. Don't underestimate women, yeah, especially if you think, I was tweeting recently that you should never underestimate a woman with who you suspect has like a personality disorder, BPD and stuff like that. Because women can be really fun to fuck, but it's like you're dancing with the devil.
Yep.
And it's just dangerous, man.
Yeah.
It's like playing with fire. Well, guys, it's been a very enjoyable conversation. I think the guys really enjoyed it on the, watching live. Appreciate you guys tuning in live. Everyone will watch us later as well. They post automatically to YouTube once we're done. I look forward to having you guys both back on the show at some point. We could do another episode about other topics. It's been fucking awesome. Final words, guys, before we round out here.
Well, just I want to say thank you, Anthony, for having me. This was great discussion. My first time interacting with Pat, who seems to have a lot of great knowledge, wisdom, and insight. And thank you, all you guys in the chat room who took time out of your Saturday morning to join us for this discussion. I really appreciate it. And again, you can find me at directapproachdating.com, directapproachdating.com. And my books and audiobooks can be found on Amazon.com.
Nice.
Yeah, and just same stuff. I mean, thank you guys for tuning in on Saturday. It's been an amazing conversation. Alan, I'd love to talk more with you about this stuff. I know that you've got a real litany of experience, and it shows. And Anthony, thanks for putting this thing together for us to really have I think there was a really good chemistry here.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. You guys can find me at Pat_Stedman on Twitter, and also patstedman.com. And if you want to get my daily-ish email newsletter that Anthony was talking about earlier, it's just patstedman.com/opt-in. But if you follow me on Twitter, you're gonna get links to that on a regular.
Yeah. And for everyone else watching too, appreciate again you guys tuning in. Thank both of you for being on the show today. This was fucking awesome. Also, both of their speeches, well, Alan has 2 speeches out now from 21 Convention on 21 Studios. Pat's full speech, there's a couple previews out now. His full speech will be on 21 Studios pretty soon, a couple days, maybe a week. And all their speeches are available at 21university.com. You can watch them ad-free, usually early by a few weeks, with a free trial. So check it out at 21university.com. And that's it for today's show. This has been episode 104 of the Redman Group, and I'll see you guys next Saturday, probably about 11 a.m., maybe 11:30. Feels nice that you do this a little later, actually. I'm not a morning person. Anyway, peace out, guys. And boys, we could stay here live privately, ending the live stream.